Hello, everybody. My name is Ian Kirkpatrick. I'm an author, idiot, and loin streamer, and today we're going to be talking about the Writers Guild of America and their strike a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that I am not the most educated on unions, so I'll be heavily looking forward to your thoughts and discussion on the topic, what you think the outcome of this is, do you think that it's a good thing that it's happening? Do you think that unions are outdated? I'm going to be looking forward to the discussion on this piece of information. But before we get started, number one, if you enjoy what I do here on the channel, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Number two, if you would like to be featured on the channel after this happens, there are two ways. Check out the links down in the description below. Number one way is through Y, which is the monthly prompt writing contest here on the channel, where I give you a prompt, you write a short story regarding the prompt, and then on the first Monday video of the month, we go over some of your guys' prompts if there are enough, and if there's not enough time to go through all of them, there is a space on the Discord to share your prompt, or your short stories. So there is that now. Number two is if you're an indie author and you have a book out or a book coming out or a couple of books out, a menagerie of books, some might say, then if you submit your first chapter and your cover to this channel, they'll be read here, and hopefully it'll help more people find your book exists and tickle their pickle, and that will become their next summer read, because summer is coming and everybody be looking for their books. So that said, number three, if you would like to read any of my books, those links are also in the description below. You can get mine at any of your favorite book retailers or at the library upon request. So if you check out any of my books, I hope you enjoy them. And get ready for the third in the Bodymore series to come out this fall. So with that said, let's jump into this situation, and we'll be reading an article that'll explain the strike, but I did want to get into exactly how this may be a bit sketchy to talk about in general, but still, I did want to mention this tweet by Victoria Marini, because there is some manners about this, but I'm not in SAG, I'm not in I'm not in any writing or acting unions, and all I really know as an outsider is there are restrictions when you're in a union of things that you are not allowed to do that you could do as an independent. So I don't really know a whole lot about those restrictions or the decorum that is expected. But Victoria Marini here said, PSA, the WGA strike may mean that novelists and authors get approached by screenwriting. While this may seem like a perfect opportunity, please note that the WGA does strongly enforce its right to prevent non-members who have engaged in scabbing from ever becoming a member, or from ever becoming members. So one thing that I want to say, as somebody who has not been in a union and is not part of any unions and has never been offered union membership of any kind, this sort of thing doesn't really make sense to me, because there's not much etiquette or understanding given to people outside of the unions. So for me, as an outsider, this reads like a threat to somebody saying, don't listen to people who approach you, or we'll never let you in our club. But I'm not in your club anyway, and I may never be in your club. Now, I'm not saying that that's what you're doing. I'm saying, as an uneducated outsider who is not told of the etiquette and is not told of what the actual things are, to have somebody say, hey, if somebody comes at you with an opportunity, do not take it, or we will never like you. Okay, but like, you don't know who I am already. So can we actually have a discussion? Especially because this is the WGA, and which is specifically for screenwriters and television writers, as far as I'm aware. I'm not sure, because I am a novelist. And for some reason, I mean, I'm just guessing this as a layman, as a nobody, as a bottom nobody that nobody cares about. The two groups, book writers and screenwriters, seem very, very separated from each other. Like, they're completely different industries. Anyway, I wanted to mention this specifically because I think that there is a disconnect in educating people and actually talking to people, and instead it just goes straight to what feels like a threat if you're not in the club, but if you're part of this, they don't see it as a threat. Like here, we've got, this is just well-known strike etiquette, isn't it? But what about people who have never been involved in a strike, never been a place where there's a strike, never been in a union? Like me, I've never been around a strike. So how would I know about any of the etiquette, about what's going on? about anything. And here Victoria says, I suspect most authors do inherently understand this, but I worry about those few who may not be familiar with the WGA or its rules. Screenwriting is a very different world than book writing, being at a disadvantage not knowing. Just extra caution for anyone who is curious. So she expects people in a completely different industry to know this, while also being like, they may not know this, it's a very different industry, but also they probably inherently know this. No, look, having gone through an MFA program, there was no focus on guilds, on etiquette for this sort of thing, even on just sending query letters. It was about writing. I don't know where you're supposed to learn this stuff until you're actually like in it. And to me, this feels a little bit like the bubble that you get in when you're in these entertainment zones. But again, let me know what your thoughts are on this. If you are an author, are you educated on these things? Do you understand these things? Do you think it comes with the territory of being in somewhere or being around somebody who is in a union versus not a union? But I have no understanding of any of this. Like this etiquette that she's saying we inherently understand. And then Black Wolf over here gives, so the only way your union is to succeed is to threaten and intimidate others. How about this? Just get better at writing and earn a better pay. So I don't think this helps either, but it also, this is set up an antagonistic relationship between Victoria here and the members of the WGA and those that support the WGA and those who are separate, who may not know better or who may not understand the issue or who may be trying to understand the issue better, because immediately it jumps to insulting one another. I mean, this came off as a threat to an outsider. It came off as a threat to me as well. Like, get on what we say and don't make that deal that's going to hurt us who are in the club. If somebody comes to you and wants to offer you, a nice little chunky deal, say no for our benefit, but we're not going to explain why. Just do it, or you're never going to be in our exclusive club that we were never going to invite you into anyway. Like, just know that that's how that comes across to an outsider who doesn't know anything. Now, anyway, you go down here with, it's not a threat. They're explaining to any unknowing authors that their union has rules against allowing scabbers to join. That does look more like a threat, though, as opposed to saying, hey, here are the rules. It's already, again, assuming a familiarity with these things when there may not be a familiarity. And B, the WGA has some of the best writers in America, so stop pretending that this is an issue with the writers and a lack of talent. I mean, you're also going to get a lot of people from regular life that look at the movies and look at the state of television and go, this is a lot of shit. But so we don't need to go through this thread. This just sets up, this was just me explaining why this can be such a contentious issue and why some may be fearful of talking about it, because you can't talk against the WGA without being blacklisted. Obviously, we've got different levels of antagonism, and I'm sure that you're always going to have some level of antagonism of the anti-industry versus the industry, especially if this is just movies and television, which are kind of at odds with a good portion of Americans. So there is that. According to IndieWire, the 2023 writer strike explained how we got here and what to expect. I'm going to go through this article with you. Hopefully we can better understand what is actually going on and get a take on it. And, yeah. I am already expecting some sort of blacklist by just saying what I've already said at this point. The writers' strike has officially begun. The Writers Guild of America and the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers failed to reach a deal on a new minimum bargaining agreement by the deadline of May 1st. Leading for the Guild to call its first strike since 2008. Writers are hitting the picket lines beginning Tuesday, and Hollywood is bracing for what could be a massive disruption to the film and TV industry. Writers say that they want a living wage as streaming devalues their work even as it demands more of their time. Studios say the Guild is asking too much at the wrong time. Streaming has to focus on revenue when it used to value subscriber count. There's a lot more to it than that, of course. No one wants a strike, but it appears that both sides are far apart and could be digging their heels in for quite a while. In recent weeks, IndieWire approached the writers' strike from the ground level, speaking to writers from different backgrounds, including a feature film writer, a narrative TV writer for both broadcast and streaming, and a veteran late-night comedy writer, each of whom faces different challenges. Here's what's at stake, how we got here, and how long the strike could last, and what it all means. The Guild said late Monday, after negotiations concluded, that the studios were trying to turn writing into a gig economy and threatening to turn writing into a freelance profession. The studios, on the other hand, said that the biggest sticking points were the Guild's requirements for mandatory staffing and duration of employment, which the AMPTP says the Guild's proposal that would require a company to staff a show with a certain number of writers for a specific period of time, whether needed or not. I can't really, that's not efficient. Like, I understand why you would want to do that, because you're trying to guarantee employment for a job that's pretty much a sketchy job. Like, being a musician is a gig economy job. I think acting is a gig economy job. Generally, most arts are a gig economy job, and to say, hey, we're going to have you on staff even if we don't pay you, even if we don't need you for a while, seems kind of asinine. Most businesses don't work that way, right? If I'm thinking of this as like a general thing, most businesses do not guarantee a job if there's no work for you to do. Now, they might keep you on in order to fulfill a certain period just in case, like, when things pick up. But especially art jobs, that's like saying, hey, I'm going to continue to pay Robert Downey Jr. a retainer fee even if we're not shooting with him, and we may not shoot with him for like 3 years, but it still reserves him for when we're ready for him in 5 years, you know? I don't know. That seems kind of, I don't know. Maybe I'm just like looking at this as so many writers work as freelance profession. Like, I've worked as a freelance copy editor. It is a gig economy. Most of it is. And even regular jobs in most states are basically almost gig economy, because you're an at-will state, so they can let you go for any reason at any time, whenever. Now, I know that's simplifying what a gig economy is, but most artists' jobs are gig economy. I don't know. Maybe it's just harder for me to get because I know so many writers and so many artists that work commissions that it's all gig economy. As an author, you're working as a gig economy by selling a book at a time. Or a short story at a time. I don't know of any artist profession that I know of that has a guaranteed payment. But again, I'm not in the entertainment industry, so I don't know what the standards are in Hollywood or in New York or in any of these things. So if you know better, let me know in the comments down below, because I think this would be a really interesting conversation to have, to get the various perspectives from people who have or have not, what your perspectives from the outside are as well. Because just as somebody who works a normal day job and has been trying to claw my way up into something else, and then our economy is just like, I'm going to inflate faster than you're ever given a raise. Cool. Nothing I do is digging me out of this. Thanks for that. The WGA went a step further and published its full list of proposals offered as of May 1st, along with AMPTP's counteroffer, some of which came with no counteroffer at all. The first big gap concerns money. The Guild says that its proposal would amount to an extra $429 million per year coming writers' way, whereas the studio's counter offers them only an extra $86 million per year. For what it's worth, the Super Mario Bros. Movie grossed worldwide in a single weekend what the writers are asking for in its raises. But while there was some give between the two sides on recalculating residual formulas or raises of minimum wage, as well as even some tentative agreements over the span of protections and other factors, Guild leadership said in an interview that the AMPTP refused to even hear out their proposals on what the Guild considered existential issues, and in that regard, both sides remain very far apart. See, this is where I think it's going to matter. I also have it open what the proposal is, so we can go through the full proposal here together in a little bit. Among those are the issues of the minimum staffing on shows, doing screenwriter work effectively for free, asking for the same protections for working on a variety of shows for streamers as those who work in broadcast, and instead offering a day rate, and refusing to even engage in the subject of using AI-generated material. The studios also did not offer a counter-proposal when the Guild asked for a viewership-based residual, such as that hit streaming shows pay more than the shows that aren't successful. Isn't suggested that the studios still see its data as a top secret. See, I think that is totally fair. I think actually that encourages writers to do better in creating a hit show if they get paid more based on pulling in views of stuff that people want to see. I mean, wouldn't you want to incentivize? I know I'm just a plebeian, and I know that I work for a business that apparently does not want to incentivize workers to actually want to stick around. When upper management straight up comes to him and is like, I know that we're paying you well below the average, not just in our state, but nationally for the kind of work that you do, but like, hang in there. But this is kind of the problem with the corporations right now, is there a majority of them don't want to take care of their employees, and they see you as replaceable. They see you as just something that is getting in the way of making more money for their shareholders. They don't care about loyalty, they don't care about employee health, and they don't care about making sure that you are taken care of if you're doing a good job for them. That used to be kind of a give and take, is we will take care of you if you take care of us. And if something bad comes along that hits the economy, because we've been loyal to you when times are good, then you'll be loyal to us when times are bad. And then when times are good again, we'll reward you for sticking around. However, at least the last couple of places that I've worked, it's been like bad thing happens, standards lower, good things happen, standards remain low, while the corporation collects more money, and then they never return to appreciating the employees who stuck around. Or they wear employees so thin and run them out until they are broken, and then just fire them because you're in an at-will state. It happens so much. So I'm kind of really sick of this idea of everything always revolving around these bigger, more powerful shareholders. And so you've got to basically turn your employees into glue in order to make more money for the shareholders, because your employees are just cogs in a machine, bro. And that's also why the executives are totally okay with AI. They've got no creative integrity. They've got no copyright integrity. And that's why they're trying to sell you on the AI. BT dubs. They say it's just a tool and it's not about replacing you. It is about replacing you, because what is the thing that all of these AI bros actually continually tell you? Oh, we're getting rid of the artists. So just keep that in mind. What happened ahead of the May 1st deadline? On April 17th, WGA members overwhelmingly approved a strike authorization vote, which gave the guild permission from its over 11,500 television and movie writers to initiate a strike once the two sides were unable to make a deal. That strike authorization vote was approved by 97.78% of the members who voted, a record for the guild in terms of unity, but also in terms of members who submitted ballots. It gave the guild a lot of leverage in the remaining days of talks with the AMTPT and the AMPTP, and proves that they mean business. Back during 2007's negotiations, there was a similar vibe around the town, and the strike authorization vote approval was nearly as high. But the guild and studios averted a strike at the last minute. That didn't happen here. In the last few months, producers began stockpiling scripts, studios greenlit projects, and raced to begin production, while pitches for other new businesses dwindled and the market slowed. Not great signs that things are going to improve anytime soon. What happened the last time writers went on strike? Back in 2007, the WGA fought for regulated payment over content moving to new media, i.e. streaming, before anyone knew to call it streaming. At that point, Netflix was a DVD company that had just introduced streaming, but enough content lived online that writers knew that they had to make a move. In the 100-day work stoppage that extended into February 2008, talk shows and other variety shows grounded to a halt. TV series like 30 Rock, The Big Bang Theory, and Heroes saw their seasons cut short, while others like 24 and Entourage were delayed altogether. It meant a whole lot of reruns, reality shows, and game shows. Some late-night hosts found ways to keep their non-writing staff paid for that period of time. Some late-night shows returned to the air without writers until the strike was resolved. A 2008 report in Los Angeles Times estimated that the strike cost the local economy $2.1 billion, and that it didn't take into account all of the ripple effects on other industries nationwide or the impact that it had on individual crew members. What was the outcome of the last strike? After the strike, streamers were obligated to hire WGA writers, and writers received a 1.2% of a distributor's gross receipts for rentals. For ad-supported streaming, writers were granted 2% of gross receipts after the first 17 days. Attempts to place reality and animation writers under the WGA failed. There was no determination around subscription-based streaming because at the time it barely existed. What could happen to movies and shows that I watch today? I don't watch hardly any, by the way. I mostly read. Now that a strike has begun, it will mean writing work will immediately halt for movies, television, and streaming. Just as before, late night talk shows will almost instantly stop producing new episodes, and variety shows like Saturday Night Live and The Last Week Tonight will be forced to cut their season short if the strike carries on. Late night hosts are still expected to pay their non-striking staff with dark this time around. While many of the highest profile broadcast and cable series are already in the can, it might not take long before viewers notice an impact and see the fall seasons and return of shows delayed, as writers generally begin to work on the seasons in May and June. The WGA recently sent out a letter to media analysts and investors indicating that during the 2007 to 08 strike, almost 25% of all primetime scripted programming during that network season was lost, and it singled out shows like Abbott Elementary, NCIS, and Chicago Med that could be delayed. Largely unaffected could be the reality shows, game shows, news, sports, and other unscripted programs. If streamers and studios have more leverage now than they did in 2007, it's because there are more avenues now for streamers to lean on for international programming that are outside the WGA. IndieWire even reported that a recent dip in the market for documentary films and series could see a renewed surge of interest, and networks and streamers are forced to turn to more unscripted documentaries for content. It's also possible because the indie market is so big now that, not talking specifically about indie books, but there are so many indie creators on YouTube, on BitChute, on Rumble, on various video platforms that if they wanted to find new talent, it would not be hard to find new talent. And YouTube was growing fairly decently in 2007. It was still in its baby legs, but it was nowhere near as developed as it is now, where there are actually like full programmings basically going on YouTube and other websites that they could also take advantage of if that's what they wanted. So like, it kind of puts the WGA in a really awkward spot. And that's not even just talking about Americans. It's also, you can find international talent and international shows that if you wanted to be like, well, I can bring that to my channel. There's a lot. And communication is easier to find. And you know how many books are published on Amazon every single day, every single year? There's not a lack of content out there to work on. Not to mention the slush piles. There are so many slush piles, I would assume, for scripts. That's how we got American Psycho 2, a slush pile. So, I mean, this is a rough situation to be in. With movies, the impact could be felt not this year, but next year, should projects that are in the pipeline now get delayed or are not able to start shooting on schedules because of a work stoppage. The longer the strike goes on, the more pronounced those problems become. Compared to 2007, what's different for studios facing the writer's strike? It's possible that they feel the pressure initially. 16 years ago, streaming was in its infancy and viewing options were much more limited. The constant feed of on-demand content means no one faces the same kind of rerun exhaustion. That said, there's still the problem of no TV shows and movies, which drives subscribers and retention. All streamers are reckoning with revenue and the reality that making money with these resource-intensive platforms is more challenging than it initially appeared. Much of the broadcast or cable content people watch the next day on streaming, like Hulu, Peacock, and Paramount Plus, would be affected by any delays of the broadcast season, and that could also impact a streamer's subscriber growth and bottom line. Many streamers, though, most notably Netflix, will be able to weather the storm for longer with slates of planned out months in advance. So one of the other things that I think is overlooked here as well, in comparison to 2007, is just how much content is actually online now that are from independent sources that you don't even have to watch television anymore. I know that my grandmother watches television and scripted shows, and I know that my mother watches television and scripted shows, but they're all watching mostly reruns of old shows, or they're watching older shows for the first time. They're not watching newer shows. But if people folded before because of that programming issue of not wanting to watch reruns, I don't know how much of an issue that is necessarily going to be now when there's so much more available in general because streaming is so widespread. Typically, in worst case scenario, some of these websites could just go and buy the licenses for other properties that they no longer have the licenses to and make that the newer content and just renew old content. Another thing that could hurt the WGA here is that if the writers weren't doing anything that was actually increasing the bottom line, increasing the revenue or the subscriber count of these different websites, if they go on strike and the websites don't see any lowering revenue or numbers, then those companies might decide that they don't actually need those writers and the writers aren't worth the demands that they're making. So this is kind of one of the ways that you kind of shoot yourself in the foot, especially if they want to switch to a freelance gig economy and then they go out looking for indie authors who want to have their books turned into movies. Then you're sidestepping the entire industry, which I think is another reason why when you go back over here to Victoria is you need to open the door and to have the discussions in a non-aggressive way to people who may not be on the inside, who you may be actually reaching across the aisle of the indie versus the industry in order to create that understanding if you want an understanding. Because if you come at it aggressively, then they're just going to see you as adversarial, which makes this harder for somebody who doesn't know and doesn't understand. I just don't think that approaching with aggression every single time is necessarily the best way to go. But it has become the standard approach, and if the studios are saying we want a gig economy, and they can literally just go onto a random page on Amazon to pick a random story and be like, hey, we would like to make this into a script. Would you do this for X amount of dollars? Gig economy, and they've got, all of the indie authors and not every indie author. And they've just got this line of indie authors that are ready to do the gig economy because it's better than the peanuts that they're making now, if they're even making that. You don't think that indie authors would jump at that in general? So you got to create this bridge of understanding and this bridge of discussion that's not about dictating to the other person, because the people going indie in general have already rejected the establishment. So I don't necessarily see how this is just a really sketchy situation for the WGA to be in with the way of the demands. I'm just saying that there are a lot of artists who work gig economy. And so, I do everything that I do on YouTube for free because I want to make my content as accessible as possible in general. I appreciate if anybody wants, to support me, if they like what I do and they want to support me through either buying books or buying some of the merch or being part of the Subscribe Star or being a member of the channel. If there's any ways that you guys want to support me, I appreciate it. But I would like to keep my stuff as accessible as possible. And maybe it means that I can't offer extra content to people that pay me because I'm trying to keep it, open to all while, working full time and writing books. But there are a lot of people that do just this. Anyway, what do the writers want? Writers are demanding higher wages that can keep up with inflation. Good luck with that. My workplace isn't even keeping up with that. How much has inflation raised over the last couple of years? My workplace has not given a COLA at all. You are lucky if you get that. Contents, bro, you have no idea how depressing it is to be working and being like, you know what? I am not making a whole lot, but if I keep this steady job and I keep releasing what I'm doing what I'm doing with YouTube and with videos and with books, maybe at some point I can start getting ahead. And inflation has made my annual work worth less. Great. Thanks. Thank you. It's a privilege to have your wages keep up with inflation. Sometimes you wonder why you even try. Anyway, content spends and company profits. The streaming boom leads to waves of content, but writers feel that they are being asked to do more for less. I know. That's also something I kind of talked about before we're living in this world that is currently just content, instead of it being about the quality of the content. Give us less content, but more thought in the content. Instead, it seems like just output stuff as fast as possible, even if it's garbage, just as long as it's constantly under consumption. And we're in a consumption economy right now. And it just burns people out. It burns out the makers, it burns out the consumers. And at the same time, the consumption just keeps going. It's like an addiction. And I think we need to pull back on that. That's my opinion. I think it's hard on the workers. I think it's hard on the creators. And it's not healthy for the consumer to be in this consumption brain. Anyway, that's a whole different issue. But let me know what you think on the massive consumption culture that we have right now. Ahead of negotiations, the WGA said median weekly pay for writers producers has declined 4% over the last decade. Adjusted for inflation, the decline is 23%. The median number of working weeks the TV staff writers, showrunners, and screenwriters has increased, even though the number of episodes on an average season has dropped from roughly 21 episodes in the old days to 8 to 12 episodes today. Writers who are paid per episode saw their average pay dwindle, sometimes at minimum wage, if not below. Many writers rely on residuals from their work being re-aired and or distributed for a long-term source of income, but these are also evaporating. The dominance of streaming means fewer TV episodes available for programming like reality shows and variety late night and talk shows produced for streaming. The residuals range from inconsistent to non-existent. In film, residuals have all but disappeared as streamers hold to their content. There's no afterlife in syndication, cable, or TV. That's also something that's in general, I think, not keeping up with technology in a lot of fields. Is a lot of studios or businesses haven't really adjusted to modern technology. And I think we saw this happen with some of the actors saying that they weren't getting paid certain ways with how streaming was as well. And it's very, very possible that because of this deficiency and this change due to technology, that creators and artists are not being paid fairly as they are being taken advantage of. But it's hard to know without seeing the contracts, and every contract is so individual. But corporations typically have a bad time keeping up with technology and fairness, and if they don't have to pay you, they usually won't. I'm just saying. Another trend a WGA wants to rein in is this mini room in which groups of writers come up with stories for a full season of a show before hiring a full writing staff. This format can allow a singular writer or showrunner to hatch a show's entire arc. Think of Taylor Sheridan and Yellowstone, or Mike White and The White Lotus. But as one mini room writer recently explained to IndieWire, in practice it means writers do the full amount of work for far less pay. If they develop storylines well in advance, the streamer or network may only have to pay it if the show is picked up for a second season. I don't know, that sounds a lot like a ghostwriter to me, where you just hire somebody to fill out your idea once you've already made the idea. And then you just get paid once, and then boop, goodbye. I don't know, this feels like stuff that writers have been dealing with, like book writers have been dealing with for a long time. This is one of the biggest sticking points in negotiation, as the WGA wants to see a minimum amount of people staffed and paid during the pre-Greenlight rooms, as well as for some to even remain on staff during and after production. Many streamers, though, may not greenlight a show until after all of the scripts are written, which led to the studios refusing to make a counter proposal. I think on some places you need give and take, and it's kind of a lot to demand that people be paid before they're even working for months, when you've already got somebody that's going to be the idea guy. That's just, I think, a really hard sell. But that's just for me as an individual who writes as an individual. Let me know what your thoughts are on the subject, because I can only give you what I know, and I don't really know a lot of how this works, and I'm giving you from my limited perspective. And then there's the AI question. The technology is in its infancy, but the Guild sees how studios might view AI as the screenwriting workhorse that they've always wanted. AI-generated materials often bases its results on Guild-protected, copyrighted material, but that work emerges without the credit or payment. The Guild is fighting to make sure that AI can't be used to rewrite a script, or that a robot can't be covered by the Guild's bargaining agreement. The Guild says talks with the AMPTP on the issue went nowhere, though the studios offered to host annual meetings to discuss advancements in the technology. See, that's where it would be a sticking point for me, obviously, if you watch any of my videos on AI on this channel. But the AI generators just steal content. And if you look at Steven, why can't I remember his last name? The AI generator people, programmers, have mentioned how they're being very careful in music programming because music industry has the money to sue you, and that AI generated music is always obvious when it's scraping from these musicians, and that's what it does because that's how AI learns. But indie writers and indie artists don't have the money or the power in order to sue them, so they're kind of preying on them. So it's not just guild covered copyrighted work, it's everybody's work is being ripped off for these machines. When really, just Hollywood, just go. There are so many books. Just go find one. There are so many. Just go onto Twitter and type in writer's lift. You will see so many books. What can writers do during the strike? There's just no excuse for this. There is no excuse to be like, I need AI to write a script. There's no excuse. Pair a screenwriter with a book writer, or a team of screenwriters with a book writer, whatever you need to do. But there is no excuse for using an AI generator with the number of books out there. Okay, anyway, what can writers do during the strike? The WGA released a detailed list of what writers can't do when the strike begins, including write for or deliver a script and negotiate or discuss projects. They're required to request the return of spec script, tell their agents not to negotiate for them, and honor picket lines and tell the WGA of any strike-breaking activities. What about the other guilds? The Directors Guild and the Screen Actors Guild each have contracts that expire June 30th. DGA members support the strike but have a no-strike clause in their own contract that requires them to still come to work and cross the picket line, even if other guilds go on strike. The Teamsters have said that they will not cross picket lines. Also supporting the strikes are IATSE, SAG-AFTRA, and the Art Directors Guild. What is the studio's side in all of this? Writers will point to the soaring executive pay, massive investments, content spending, production budgets, and annual profits, and say, why aren't we seeing that money? The massive corporations have their challenges. For Disney, Paramount, and Warner Brothers Discovery, their flagship streaming services aren't yet profitable despite the years that they've spent chasing subscribers. Maybe that means that you shouldn't focus on being a streaming service. Maybe that means that that model doesn't work for you and you should go back to what traditionally worked for you and stop trying to rush out this content that is strangling writers that also doesn't give you the pay. Like you're running people into mud, mistreating people, and trying to make money in this thing that's obviously not working, and your quality is going down. Just let it go and do what was working for you before. Everybody doesn't have to do the same thing. Different things work for different people. Disney is in the midst of laying off 7,000. I don't understand why this is so hard for corporations to understand. Disney is in the midst of laying off 7,000 employees, and they're following the other hundreds of thousands of layoffs and reorganizations from their rivals. Streamers like Netflix and Amazon are tightening their belts and not increasing their content spending. The global box office is still far below its pre-pandemic performance. I mean, maybe if you weren't all trying to stream stuff, it would be fine. So maybe now is not the ideal time to be fighting for money, but the guild has learned through painful experience it never is. What were the negotiations? We've got proposal, all minimums, including residual bases, that's 6 to 5%, 6.55%, where it was 4.32%, one-time increase for residuals. Streaming features with a budget of $12 million or more receive a full theatrical term, including better initial compensation. Made for HBS VOD programs, 96 plus minutes with a budget of $40 million or more receive 9% increase. So that's more money. Appendix A, established minimums for streaming extended television. Appendix A terms, so high budget shows made for video on demand, including weekly minimums, 13-week guarantees and residual base. Episodic television, PreGreenlight rooms, minimum staff of 6 writers, including 4 writer producers. post-greenlit rooms, 1 writer per episode up to 6 episodes, then 1 additional writer required for each 2 episodes after 6 to a minimum. But I don't know about you, when I am like working with somebody, I like to just have my team that I know I work well with in collaborations, not constantly add new people. The more you bring it, the more people you bring into a collaborative effort, the more messy it gets, because your collaborative energy has to work together, and not everybody has the same style of characters, the same style of creative energy. I only have met 2, maybe 3 people that I've really worked very, very well with, and 2 people in general that I would love to work long-term with, that I plan to work long-term with in creativity in that manner. Duration of employment. Minimum staff guaranteed of at least 10 consecutive weeks. Oh yeah, this was outright. Both of these were rejected. The mandatory staffing was rejected by the television studios guild. By the television studios. It looks like they in general did not like any of the requests for required pre and post work, when they're like, we don't need the writers anymore. There was their streaming, where it looks like they just had money differences, viewership based streaming residuals. There was complete rejection on that. Ad supported, complete rejection on that. Pension and health. Each member of a team gets pension and health care contributions as if they were writing as an individual. Does that just mean that they get covered health insurance and stuff? Rejected. Artificial intelligence. Like, this would just be like, guys, no. Tentative agreement. Because that's stealing. So mostly money and hiring and artificial intelligence. What were the rules of the strike? According to the WGA's website, the rules for the strike are these. Immediately stop writing for all struck companies. Do not deliver or submit any literary materials to a struck company. Do not sign or deliver document related to writing assignments or the sale or option of literary materials to a struck company. Do not negotiate with struck companies for writing services, and notify your representative to cease negotiations on your behalf until the strike concludes. Notify struck companies to return or delete writer-owned spec literary materials or sample scripts. Do not discuss future writing assignments or the sales or options of literary materials with the struck company. Do not negotiate with a struck company for the development, financing, or production project. Honor all guild picket lines and do not enter the premise of any struck company. Preserve a digital date stamp copied of all unproduced literary materials written for a struck company. You must inform the guild of the name of any writer you have reason to believe is engaged in scab writing or other strike-breaking activity. You must picket or perform other strike support duties and cooperate with guild committee charges with enforcement to the strike rules in each guild constitution. Do not attempt to negotiate a settlement of the strike with any struck company. Additional strike rules pertaining to writers also employed in additional capacities, hyphenated. Rules pertaining to non-members. The guild does not have the authority to discipline non-members for strike breaking or scab writing. However, the guild can and will bar the writer from future guild membership. This policy has been strictly enforced in the past and has resulted in convincing many who would be strike breakers to refrain from harming the guild and its members during the strike. Therefore, it is important for members to report to the guild the name of any non-members whom you believe have performed writing services for a struck company, and as such, information as possible about, and as much information about non-members possible. I mean, you're not making yourself any better. I'm just saying, you gotta. Tell me if I'm off here. But if you want the people who are not part of your guild to agree with you, shouldn't there be more being done to inform the people that are your possible allies so they know what is going on, as opposed to just saying, hey, by the way, don't cross us, or you're over? Because all that you do when you do that is you create enemies of people who never wanted anything to do with you anyway, or who may have already been on the fence about you. I mean, I understand why, but it even feels like asking these sorts of questions can make it sketchy because you're just asking for understanding, and it seems like they're saying no and give us the name of people so that we can blacklist them. I mean, I'm going to be poor forever, so it's whatever. I know these people hate me. So I'll ask the question so you don't have to. But does this not just seem limiting in a way to be scary? Like you were to abide by the rules or else you're fucked forever. Good luck ever getting a feature film. Ever. For a club that you weren't even a part of. That you were never going to be a part of anyway. Who needs it? I do want to say, though, I appreciate the WGA taking a stance. What is this? Back in last month. Back in March. It's up longer than. Against AI-generated content. With their proposal that writers may not be assigned AI-generated materials to adapt, and nor may AI software generate covered literary materials in the same way that studios may point to the Wikipedia articles or other research materials and ask a writer to refer to it. They can make the writer aware of AI-generated content, but like all research materials, it has no role in a guild-covered work, nor in a chain of title in the intellectual property. It is important to note that AI software does not create anything. It generates a regurgitation of what it's fed. If it's been fed both copyright protected and public domain content, it cannot distinguish between the two. Its output is not eligible for copyright protections, nor can the AI software program sign a certificate of authorship. And that's something that I don't think that the producers or the executives will ever understand or care about, because they are generally focused more on the bottom line and how can we produce, not what the rest of this is. So there's that. The article and the strike rules and everything will be listed down in the description below in case you would like to take a better look at them. I look forward to hearing your thoughts on this if you feel like you want to mention anything, because again, the WGA and members make it very clear that if they put your name in the hat as a traitor, it goes in the hat. And I don't think that really sets up a very trusting relationship to make allies out of non-allies, out of adjacent, occupations. But what do I know? I'm just a plebeian that will never be anything. So with that said, thank you so much for watching. Looking forward to your thoughts on this subject. What do you think the outcome of this is going to be? Do you think that the WGA has more leverage, or do you think that the writers have more leverage? I personally think that the way that YouTube and independent content has developed makes the WGA have a harder foot in the door. Putting myself at risk here, my opinion on this is that unions are in general pretty sketchy on how helpful they actually are to the people that they say they're serving. So I also think that it is a way to say we're a special club and you need to behave to get in line in order to succeed in the system that we have created. However, I think that the WGA is in a disadvantaged position during this because of how independent media and independent entertainment has taken off in the last 15 years since their previous since their previous strike, where these producers and these studios could literally just go and find so much other talent, so many other writers who are not part of this club, who will independently negotiate, because let's face it, it's such a blind spot on the part of the guild. And they know, well, I don't think it's a blind spot. I think they know, which is why there's that threat. But independent writers have already rejected the system. That's one of the reasons why many go indie, is because they don't like the industry. They don't like how the publishing industry is run. They don't like how the agents work. They didn't want to be put under that sort of control or censorship or forced into submission by these controllers. And so if you have another industry with another set of controllers saying, obey me or else, I think a majority of indie published authors would take that 6-figure deal if somebody said, hey, would you like your book made into a movie? And also, you are probably in charge of writing the script, maybe with some help, because the industry writers are out of town. Which may mean more integrity for the book. I don't know how those deals would go down, but I think that the WGA is at the major disadvantage. I think they Now, obviously, it's not affecting me because I'm not in the WGA, I'm not in the situation. It's fair to want to have your pay keep up with inflation because all of us want that pay to keep up with inflation. We are literally all suffering because of some choices that were made. But I think mixing too much, like the demand to be hired long term to fight against the gig economy, was at their disadvantage. And I think there are certain things that, yeah, just made the corporations and the studios dig their heels in harder, which include the hire us even when you don't need us and pay us for that. Well, yeah, they're going to try to replace you. My hope is that there might be a new guard that comes in with bringing in new talent one way or another. Because there are so many writers out there with so many fresh stories to tell that why are we just getting sequels and remakes and live action retellings when there is so much more out there? There is so much more that all the studios have to do is actually leave what they're used to, and they will find brand new stuff that may end up costing less. I mean, but I also think that studios and corporations in general have been very unaccommodating and not grateful for a lot of the talent that they do have or the workers that they do have. And I'm not just talking about entertainment industry, I'm talking about other industries that like to use and abuse employees. And it's just a problem with not appreciating humanity. And the work that people put in for you and the lives that people give you. So that's a different issue altogether, but I just want to end this by saying that you are worth it. You're a person, and you've got value. Whether your workplace recognizes it or not, you have value. So with that said, looking forward to your thoughts down below. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great weekend, and don't die.
Was that Wayland Cross in the trunk? Do you know, or is that something that's still being figured out?
The person in the trunk was not Wayland Cross.
Is he in trouble?
We don't know who did it, but as the owner of the car, the longer he's missing, the worse it looks for him.
Cross isn't a killer. For the last couple of years, the average number of murders in Baltimore has been over 300, and it's been going up. Mind you, that's only whatever the badges count as official murder, and believe me, there are people that don't count when they die. Wayland? If you're down here, tell me. I'm not talking to the badges, I've been looking for you. They found a body in your trunk. Way. Why? Did you do that? To the left, plain black letters read along the wall. You walked in the corridor. Once that ends, you chose the dark is on the right. My vision goes blurry, flickers black and black and black for longer intervals until I can't see anything at all. I'm not screaming anymore, but my voice echoes back to me. Where the hell am I? You're dead, Josephine. Even smart people do stupid shit sometimes, right?